Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yes!
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show.
You're a great American.
Now, Ross Kaminsky.
Come on, man.
On Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
33 years of excellence in broadcasting.
People don't remember what you say. Too many words flying around it, but they never forget how you make them feel.
This is Rush. From the very beginning.
3 hours of broadcast excellence straight ahead. Great to have you
until now.
So I have to tell you something today that I wish I didn't have to tell you. And it's a struggle for me because I had to inform my staff earlier today. I have been diagnosed with advanced lung cancer.
And that was a day that I think obviously nobody in Rush Limbaugh's audience will ever forget, but also those of us who have made a career, or in my case, a second career, out of being in radio, a day we will never forget. And a day that I'm sure that my guest and my friend, James Golden, who most of you probably know as Bo Snerdley, will never forget. But I'm not here, and I think James is not here to spend time focusing on sad news, but rather on what an incredible legacy and just a remarkable impact on the world Rush Limbaugh had. James, first of all, good morning, and thanks so much for being here. It's great to talk to you again, even under the circumstances.
Well, Ross, thank you. And you know what? Yes, my friend Ross, we have been friends for ages, and I thank you for your friendship and for for all your very kind words and reaching out during what has been a really difficult period. So it's just really good to be with you, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. So what I just played was kind of an intro to a new podcast that you are hosting. Tell us a little about that, and then I want to ask you some other things. But tell us about Rush Limbaugh, the man behind the golden EIB microphone, which debuts tomorrow.
Well, the first thing is that I hope it meets the audience's expectations. That is one of the things that Rush did every day of his broadcast career, was try to meet audience expectations. So with this podcast, what we want to do is give people a deeper look into the Rush that we knew. And I think in some ways, it will yes, there'll be some people that you'll meet that you haven't met before who work on the show, who work behind the scenes, who will spend some time with some of his golf buddies. We'll spend some time with David, his brother, talking about his early life. But in the end, what I hope is accomplished is that we have a deeper understanding of somebody that we already know, that was just an amazing human being, had amazing capacity, not just for broadcast excellence, but also excellence as a human being, a generous person who was humble and grateful for the success he had, who taught us along the way life lessons. Number one, that you can fail at things over and over and over and over again and still become successful if you have the courage and perseverance to stay true to your own passion.
I'm obviously no Rush Limbaugh, but I've noticed from time to time, actually quite frequently, when I'm out and I happen to meet a listener or I go to an event where I meet listeners, they act like they really know me. And then I realize, just because of how I talk on the show, talk about myself, they really do know me pretty well. And I think Rush was very, very much like that.
Yes. We got a chance to know this man over 33 years. One of the calls that still stands out to me is a guy who tried to put it all in words about what his experiences were listening to Rush almost from the beginning. And in the end, the guy, this gentleman broke down in tears and he said, listen, I just want to hear your voice, his voice every day, because that had given us a lot of comfort. And there was a lot of comfort in that for people. And so because he was a part of our families, he was a part of our life for 33 years.
How did you meet Rush for the first time?
The very first time I met Rush was his first day in New York, actually, I believe, or one of the first days in New York. But it was his first time coming into the ABC building, 1330 Avenue of the Americas, where WABC's, we were on the 8th floor. he was coming in with Ed McLaughlin, his broadcast partner. I had a previous relationship with Ed. I was the music director at WABC, and then their very first producer of talk shows. And Ed was bringing Rush in to introduce him to everybody. I happened to be coming out while they were coming in, and he introduced me to him. And he told me during the introduction that this guy, Rush Limbaugh, was going to be doing a syndicated show, and he was going to be very successful. And I remember saying to Rush, "Oh, so he's going to be kind of the next Paul Harvey." Little did I know that this man that I was meeting was going to surpass everybody in the industry and become the greatest broadcaster of our time.
You tell me if I have this wrong, but I think in the 90s there was a period of time where you were simultaneously working on the production side for Rush and also on the air with your own show or co-host of a show on the air. Do I have that right?
You do. I was working 5 days a week with Rush doing radio and the television show during that part of that time. And then on Saturdays and Sundays, I was doing my own show on WABC radio in New York. And guess what? I'm now doing a weekend show on WABC again in New York. It's my home radio station. It is, to me, that is my comfort zone. And it is the radio station that my career flourished. And in many ways, not just with Rush, but on my own. I mean, my weekend shows had great ratings. And so it's just good for me to be back at WABC on Saturdays, and we're having a ball. But yeah, you have that right.
My special guest, for those just tuning in, you know him as Bo Snerdley, his real name James Golden, a longtime colleague and good friend of Rush Limbaugh. The reason I asked you that question, James, is you clearly could have made whichever choice you wanted to about a career path for yourself that was more about being on the air versus a career path for yourself that was more about doing what you did with Rush Limbaugh. You were on the air now and then, but it wasn't really an on-air gig. And I think a lot of people, maybe just for ego purposes, would have taken that first path that I mentioned. I got to be on the air myself, but you didn't really do that. I shouldn't say really. You didn't make that choice. Why? What was it about Limbaugh that made you say this is better, more important, whatever it was, than being on the air yourself?
Wow, Ross, that is the first time anybody's really asked me about that. And it was a decision. And the decision was, do you work with somebody who is going to be the absolute best in the world at what they're doing and be part of this history and supportive of it? Or do you want to, go out? Look, I recognize one thing. Rush is the greatest broadcaster of our lifetimes, period, in radio. There is nobody in this business, and I don't mean this as a slight to anyone, because there are great broadcasters, including yourself, Ross, but there was one Rush Limbaugh. Mm-hmm. And so the chance to work with this man who just had an unbelievable skill set of talent, or to go on my own and just try to fulfill a vanity quest to be on the radio, no, to me, it wasn't really a choice. It was work with Rush. He was, and working with him was one of the greatest blessings of my life. He was beyond an incredible broadcaster, an incredible human being. And to see his greatness, not only as a broadcaster, but to experience this incredible force of nature that was Rush Limbaugh, and to be aligned with the program and a chance to know him for 33 years, I would never trade that decision in for anything. Anything.
Can I keep you for two more questions?
Sure.
So you made the decision that we just talked about to go with Rush early. And I'm curious how you knew that early that he had the level of talent and the potential for the kind of impact that he ended up having. How did you know it that early?
am just as passionate about radio as Rush was, I think. And maybe not. Rush's passion began at 8 years old. Mine began at 14 years old. I remember what I was wearing the first day that I walked into a radio station. I remember what that scene. We play that scene in my mind. I knew at 14 that I wanted to be in radio, and so for me, being in radio, and I come from a background. My cousin was an amazingly successful disc jockey. I've worked around great people in radio my entire career. Their names wouldn't mean anything to most of you, but because you weren't in the markets that I was in New York, which was the top radio market. I worked with the top people in the top radio market. When I heard Rush, I heard something different. I knew that this man was different than anybody else that I had ever worked with before. He was that good at what he did. Mm-hmm. Everything about him was different. And he had that thing that you can't put in a bottle, you can't teach. It is the talent. He did have this talent on loan from God, as he put it, but he had an original talent that no one else had. And being in radio for so long, I could spot that. That's easy. Like, this guy is just incredible.
Yeah, I'm always grateful. I feel like not just my job, but my industry wouldn't exist without Rush Limbaugh, and I never forget that. I think I'd like to end my conversation with you by asking you, you said that the thing about Rush that people need to know, and I think a lot of people do know, not only was he a great broadcaster, but a tremendous human being. Tell us some short story about Rush as a human being.
I'll tell you a short story that happened yesterday. I was doing an interview yesterday on a radio station in South Dakota. And during the course of the interview, the host of the show talked about a liberal man in his community who owned a business. And when the Great Flood happened out there, somehow or another, Rush became aware of this man's plight, being flooded out, and sent the man $50,000, and no one knew it, just so he could get back on his feet.
Wow.
That Rush Limbaugh, that's who he was. And no one ever, he didn't want any publicity about it. It got no publicity. I didn't learn this until yesterday when this guy told me. And this acts like that, you're going to hear, I bet over the years, repeated thousands of times. He was a generous, caring, loving soul who had an amazing talent. And he was the best in this industry, but more important than that, and look, I'm not saying to deify him. Rush had character flaws. We all have character flaws. We're human beings. Rush was a human being, and I get that. But he rose above every single character flaw that he had to become a great a man as he was a broadcaster.
Wow. You know, what a remarkable privilege for you. And it's not luck. You've earned it. And fortune favors the well-prepared. And you worked your ass off behind the scenes. I assume every bit as hard as Rush worked to do his job to make both of you the best at your craft. And I think part of Rush's success, you're probably too humble to say this yourself, but part of Rush's success, despite his tremendous talent, or in addition to his tremendous talent, was you. And so I'm very grateful for you. I'm grateful for your friendship, grateful for your time today. And
Thank
James,
you,
go ahead.
Can I just say something about that real quick? Look,
sure.
No, not me. We have an entire staff of people. We had Kathleen Gleason doing the audio. She's the best at what she does. We have Diana Aloco, Denise May, working on the newsletter. They are singularly the best at what they do. It was the most popular, successful political newsletter in America. They worked with Rush on that aspect of it. We have people in the engineering booth Brian Johnson, Mike Mamone. They are best at what they do. We had Dawn Baczynski, who was with us in the studio every day. She's one of the most amazing stenographers in the country. Rush surrounded himself with people that are just so amazing. All of these people that I worked with, and I'm leaving out people like Ali, like our web crew. All of these people could go on and become and run companies themselves. They were entirely professional, great people. Rush assembled this an amazing team of people. I feel guilty sometimes because I get, noticed because of the on-air relationship that Rush and I had. But all of these people are immensely talented, and they all played a role in all of this. And Rush was one of the most amazing bosses ever. He hired these people with immense talent, and he let them do their jobs. And everybody worked their ass off because we all wanted to please him and because we all love him.
Folks, I think you can get a sense just from this short conversation of what you're going to get from the new limited original podcast series, Rush Limbaugh, the man behind the golden EIB microphone. It's a 12-episode series that's going to be hosted by my special guest and friend today, Bo Snerdley, James Golden. It premieres tomorrow on iHeartRadio and everywhere you get your podcasts. James, I know you gave me a lot more time than we had planned on. I'm grateful for that. And thanks for being here. And best of luck with the podcast. And I hope we keep in touch.
We of course, we're going to stay in touch. Folks, when I tell you that Ross is my dear friend, I mean it. Ross and I go back. He is one of the true gentlemen in this business. He's one of the true good guys in this business. Never stab you in the back. And I just want you to be so successful. You are now, and I want your success to keep growing, Ross. Thank you for being my friend, and thank you for all that you do.
Thanks so much, James. Appreciate you. Wow. That leaves me a little bit speechless. Okay. What can you say about that? Bo Snerdley was quite an interesting radio character in his own right, of course. I didn't think it would be necessarily what I wanted to take his time with, but I just loved the concept of his being officially black enough to criticize Obama. You remember that? Is the officially black enough to criticize Obama, criticize her. Well, I guess that makes him black enough to criticize Joe Biden and Maxine Waters too. But more than that, he's just a good man. And I'm really looking forward to this podcast about Rush Limbaugh, because I'll tell you what, whether you really loved Limbaugh's show or just liked it or didn't even like it that much, Rush Limbaugh was a force, not just in radio. He was a force in culture and in society. And I don't think there will ever be another like him. We'll be right back.
KHOW Denver, 630 KHOW, an iHeart radio station. Available everywhere on our free iHeart Radio app. #1 for music, radio, and podcasts, all in one.